the weekend just gone, I met up with a guy that we all know, I think, called Will or William Purdue Brun, as I said, Will from
I
Cambridge.
don't know. Yeah, Will, that'll do, because I have no idea how to say his surname either.
Yeah, Will from Cambridge, and we got talking actually about this this notion of a physical pension, which I thought was really interesting. Something he's been talking to his guys about recently. Obviously, there's a lot in the media at the moment and stuff about finance and interest rates and what's happening with people's money and people's pensions and that sort of thing. And he talked about a physical pension. And it's very much kind of in line with what we talk about on the podcast most weeks, where I know one of your sayings, Peter, obviously is, what's it look like in 20 years? Or we often say that what you do in this decade sets you up for the next decade and so on. But I really like that, especially working with lots of members who are in their 50s and 60s and beyond. But even for us guys in our 40s, now's really what we're doing now is going to really impact on how we are in our 50s and 60s. So I thought that was a really kind of powerful concept. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I think it's hugely interesting, because I remember starting work and I was told, like, think about your pension when you start work. And I was like, why? I'm like 20, 22 or whatever it was. And it's like, no, it matters. And then unfortunately I knew that, and I didn't take much convincing of it. But what I find interesting, I've just thought of this, is the physical pension. So if you're building up your physical pension, what it'll do is actually help you save on your financial pension as well, because you're less likely to have to dive into that to pay for care, because you can care for yourself. So actually,
wow, how many people are getting to an age, particularly our demographic, how many people are getting to an age where they have to take care of elderly parents?
I was about, so my mum's 78, and I went to visit her last weekend in Newcastle, and I've been a bit kind of concerned, because I'm like, can she still look after herself? She lives in the bungalow where I grew up, so it's perfect size for it, everything. And I stayed with her for a couple of nights, and she can still look after herself, so that's great, because me and Sean were talking about, like, what happens, we're talking sheltered accommodation and stuff like that, and I was like, not yet. My mind's been put at rest for that. But the thing is, she's not necessarily really healthy and really mobile, but she's not unhealthy and unmobile, and she's never really drank much or smoked much or anything her entire life. So, she's going to live forever, as far as I can tell. So it's like, well, this becomes a thing that you got to but this becomes a thing that you got to think about, doesn't it? It's like, if she went in a home now and she's there for 20 years, like, somebody's got to pay for that, right? That's like a lot of money. So it's a huge consideration, and this is what people don't think about now. And like Paul's just said, you might have elderly relatives and all that, and you have to think about them. What about you? And how far do you want to get down the line? There's a guy who I know as well, who I think it was his father-in-law was in his 80s. He was about 85 or something like that, and lived in Henley-on-Thames. Went out for a walk one day, felt a bit tired, just lay down by the river, by the Thames on the grass in the sunshine, and then didn't wake up. And I was like, what a way to go. He went out for a walk, so he was physically active and all that, and then his heart gave up. And I was like, that's how I want to go. Like, in the sunshine and all that, what a lovely way.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? That's what I can't remember if it's it was either Dan John or Mark Rifkind or one of those kind of guys said, in an ideal world, you live a long, healthy, active life, and you just drop down dead,
Exactly like that, yeah.
Yeah, exactly like that. It's not the and we've spoke about this before on the podcast, the difference between lifespan and health span, and the difference between, quantity of life and quality of life.
Yes.
And, I don't think anyone wants to really live the last 20 years of their life, totally dependent on others and dependent on medications and care and in and out of hospital the whole time, and with a
isn't that the thing? People are living
life,
are living the same length of time, but they're just having much higher levels of morbidity for the last 20 years.
Yeah, I think lifespan is gradually increasing, isn't it? I mean, it's not just because we are able to keep people alive for much longer now. But I don't know if the quality of those extra years is particularly great. You know, it's a bit of a downer to be talking about this. But,
I mean,
well,
I
that's why
suppose that's one thing we don't talk about really in
Yeah.
our health odyssey is death.
But that's why when I mentioned it, I mentioned like my guy's father-in-law because that's a nice story.
Oh no, that's great.
It's you two who took it off in that direction.
But no, I mean, I think that primarily you have to be responsible. You know, you take responsibility for your own life, don't you? And your own health and your own activity and your own nutrition and your own habits and all the rest of it. And that's all you can really do. But it was just really interesting. I just like that. I like that concept of a physical pension. Because I can see it that, you know, you're paying into it daily, you're paying into it weekly, you're paying into it monthly, to then so that you have a better quality of life when you get older. And
well, we were saying before we started recording, weren't we? If you just put, it's like a savings account or whatever, or your pension. If your pension doesn't grow, if it's not like in a pension that's invested, it's just money that goes into a pension that sits there. It shrinks, doesn't it, over time? So in 20, 30 years' time, it's not what it was. And it's so the physical pension works the same. Unless you keep paying into it and make it work for you, it just shrinks. And by the time you get to needing it, there's less there. And it's so that's you know, same for the body, isn't it?
So I suppose it's almost like that use it or lose it principle, isn't it? You know,
absolutely,
with training and with physicality and things like that.
Here's a great story for that's just reminded me from my mum, right? So she's 78. And when I was staying with her, I took her for a walk around the block where she lives, and she's lived there for like 50 years or whatever. So went for a walk, and it's funny. This is lots of things in Newcastle have changed in the city centre and stuff. Lots of different buildings and lots of different facades that are now new things and all of that. Where my mum lives, it's just stuck in time. Nothing's changed over my lifetime anyway, put it that way. But anyway, so I took her around like for a walk around the block, and she was fine. She was very slow, obviously, and all that sort of stuff, but she was fine. And then the day that I left as well, I got up that morning, we had some breakfast, and then I said, right, before I go, let's go for a walk around the block. And we went in the opposite direction just to mix it up a bit, right? And she got talking to this lady, Mary, who she's known for years. And she used to work with Mary's son, I think. And honestly, these two little old ladies having a chat for about 20 minutes. It was brilliant to watch. I just stood watching. And it was great. They were just chatting, like nattering away, you know, just about stuff, about their ailments and what have you. And then the lady said to me, Mum, she goes, so you haven't got any grandkids, have you? And she was like, no, I haven't, because me and my brother haven't got any kids. And she was like, she goes, oh, that's sad, isn't it? And I was like, I'm not here, you know, by the way. But anyway, that's by the by. But then we carried on walking around. Then we bumped into another guy who was out walking his dogs, who my mum used to work with, who knew my dad as well. And, you know, who, like we've spoke about before, he passed away nearly 19 years ago. But he knew him and worked with him. So they had a little bit of a chat, and I said hello, and then we carried on walking. And it was a lovely sunny day. And she said, do you know, she was like, you haven't seen Mary for ages. And it's like, that's because you don't go out. If you just go for a wander round, you'll see all these people, and you'll end up being out for an hour and a half, doing a very short loop of the place. And at least people can see you're all right as well, you know? So
especially like you say, if she's lived there for 50 years, she must know so many people in the area. So then that's good for your physical health. You're getting fresh air, you're getting out on your feet, you're, you know, mental health, you know, socializing, meeting people, talking, all of that. Yeah. So
that's like with the online stuff and all of this, it's like people sit at home and wait for things to come to them these days, don't they? And it's like, you know, if you get out and about, you go and find more.